Endless Winter Paleoamericans. This is a pretty complex, pretty involved worker placement and deck building game. Each turn, players will place a worker on a display. They will play cards either for their effect or to fuel certain actions, as is to produce certain resources. And you continue like this for 3 turns. That's the end of a round. At the end of a round, you have a special phase called the Eclipse. 4 rounds. Then we have final scoring, and the player with the highest score wins the game. As I said, it's a game with a lot of stuff going on mechanically and also physically. There are just so many displays and boards and mini boards and things going on that there basically no way I could find in which you can place all of the components. This is not all of them. All of the components in which everybody can have easy access to everything, or everybody can just see everything that they need. You will have to stand up often to check the symbols on that mini board there and check what happens on that board, and so on and so forth. So these that you see here are the boards that everybody will be using, and then here's one of the player boards that you will have. So each player will have that, meaning that if you play with 3 or 4 players, there will be more stuff on the table. The game can be played, again, 2 to 4 competitive, or you can also play it some competitive, but against an AI, and it's a pretty simple, pretty effective AI. So, as I said, worker placement and deck building. So you start with a deck of cards. Each player starts with slightly different deck, but everybody will have the following cards. And the cards are 2 types. Tribe cards representing people in your tribe. And you can tell them because they have these symbols here, they represent the labor points that they produce. This guy here produces 1 labor point, and that's all he does. Then you have better cards that produce points, and still labor points, and also have other stuff. For example, the tribeswoman can turn food into tools. And then cards may have the symbol here, which will apply during the eclipse phase if you have saved the card for that phase. Because remember, 3 turns, so everybody takes 3 turns, then you have the eclipse, then you start the next round. Now, and then this is for the tribe cards, and then we have the culture cards that simply have, that are indicated by that symbol there. There are 2 times, Era 1 and Era 2, that will be used in round 3 and 4. And then they have different effects as indicated here. It's a worker placement, I mentioned that, right? Each player has 2 standard workers, and then you have a chief, a boss, and there are several ones, and each has a unique advantage and also a unique figurine, and that's kind of cool. And these are the chiefs that we're talking about. Again, each with a specific advantage when you place that on the worker board. And that is the board where you will be resolving those actions there, where you will be placing your workers. As you can see, again, there is a lot going on. The general idea is this. At the beginning of your turn, you can play culture cards. Remember the ones with the skin, animal skin symbol, and just resolve their stated effect. Then you will place one of your workers. Again, it can be your chief or it can be a regular worker. There are 4 spaces in which they can be placed, and you may want to put it on top of the corresponding space because that gives them a certain action. Then once you're done with that, you move it down, and then you can perform that action. Then, if you're the first worker on that in that section, you receive a bonus indicated by that icon there, and then you can move your worker there because work is done. Or, like I like to do it, you keep the first worker there as a reminder that that special icon there has been used. And so each time that you send a worker to one of these 4 areas, the worker has the option of performing 2 jobs in that order, plus potentially getting a bonus. Now, what are those things that you can do if you look at it up close? The action up there on the top is to spend tools and labor. Again, labor will come from cards, but also, maybe I should show you this now. I should show you your personal board. in which you will have a way of recording how much food you have, how many tools you have. This is where you store your camps that can be placed on that other board there. The villages can later replace the camps. Here you have an area where you can place stones. The printed symbols there are the cost to place a stone token there, and the stone token will give you bonuses later. And here you have megaliths, which you will remove and you place on that board there, and by removing them you're also revealing other bonuses. I told you that there are a lot of boards, right? I haven't even shown them all. I haven't showed you the idle board there with not one but 2 tracks that you can advance to gain different kinds of benefits. And of course here we have the cultural display. The cultural display and the tribe display, where you can get cards that you can add to your deck. But I think I'm getting ahead of myself here, because remember, we need to look at those actions there. So, that action there allows me to spend tools and labor, which again can come from my cards. I can also spend food to produce labor. And what that does is it can allow me to buy tribe cards from the display here. These are cards that are available in each and every game. And I can do it multiple times by, again, using simply one worker there. Then I can move the worker there and I can spend food to bury cards. So I remove cards that I own and I place them under a special card, and those cards are out of the game. They'll be buried. Each player has a card such as this one under which you place the buried cards. That is the symbol. And first of all, you're thinning out your deck and possibly removing cards that you will not need. And then also there are ways in which those will allow you to score later on. If I'm the first player there, I also get to advance one of my 2 symbols here, one of my 2 tokens here, again on one of these 2 tracks. And they basically will allow me to score. These 2 tracks will allow me to collect benefits as I advance, such as victory points, and also to score different things at the end of the game. If I'm very high on this track, I will score more points for the cards that I buried, and if I'm high on this track, I can convert the tools and food into victory points at the end of the game at a better rate. Back to the actions that we're taking here. If I decide to send my worker to this action here instead, I can spend 3 labor to acquire a culture card, the ones with the animal skin, and then also I can spend food and tools and artifacts and tools to buy a stone. The stone tiles are indicated there. There is a random selection that will be available in different games, so different amounts based on number of players. And when I acquire stone, I will place it on my player board, which I showed you earlier, and that will give me advantages during the eclipse phase. This other action, and the advantage, food, tools. This other action here. Spend tools to place camps on the landscape, I don't remember the name of that one, on the world board. So spend tools to place them, and they always start from the same space in the middle of that board. Spend labor to move your camps. Spend food to turn 3 camps into a village. Let me show you what I mean by that. We have this, again, landscape here, which is built differently with different hexes. There are some that are not used depending on number of players, and also you will build this at the beginning of the game. You start when you have an action that lets you add camps, you take them from your player board. Which incidentally makes your food track longer, giving you chances to store more food, and you place them here. So that's the advantage that you get for the action of adding camps. You can also receive actions representing the camp with a little arrow, and those will allow you to move your camps around. The action of building a village, which I showed you earlier on the main board, lets you take the leftmost village from your player board and place it at the intersection of 3 hexes where you have camps, unless there's already a village there, just like so. Also, these camps are now removed. During the eclipse phase, we're going to check for each hex who has the most influence. A camp causes that player to have an influence in that hex. A village projects 2 influence points in each hex. And whoever has the most influence gets, during the eclipse phase, the bonus indicated by the eclipse symbol. But we're not there yet, are we? No, we're not. Because we are back here, where we have the advantage, again, of moving and placing a village if you're the first to use that action in a round. And then, this other action here, we are gonna go hunting. For a labor, you can reveal cards from the animal deck. For a tool and a labor, you can hunt them. That is, you can take cards from the animal display. And then here, you can choose to tip animals that you previously caught. The action here is to gain a random animal. What are these animals of which I speak? There is a board for that. Of course, there's always just one extra board here. The animal board is here, so we have a deck of animal cards. Again, the action of revealing them will place them here on the board itself, and there's a limited number of slots. The action of taking them, well, you guessed it, allows you to hunt a card. And once you hunt an animal, you will place it under your personal board. Once you hunt them, you take the cards and you place them there upright. Then you may remember the action of tipping an animal. You're basically killing the animal and gaining the benefit indicated there next to the tipping symbol, like for food and 1 tool for tipping, processing that animal. The band that you see at the bottom indicates victory points that you score at the end of the game for sets of animals that are still standing that way. And I may wonder again, I mentioned briefly megaliths. They are here. There are actions that will allow you to place megaliths. When you take that action, you remove them, always starting from the left. And the first 2 are generic, and then the remaining ones are personal. When you take the action as a benefit, as a result of taking actions, you can add megaliths. They're added to that board there, which is made of 4 different tiles, and they can be configured differently depending on number of players. And, well, you place them there, and once you place your tiles, you will receive the benefits that you're covering, like 2 food there, and 2 food there, and drawing 2 cards there. Also, if you place your megaliths not directly on the board, but on a group of 4 other megaliths, then you score points, and you score more points if you're covering at least some of your own personal megaliths. That covers the general idea, not the fine points, but the general idea about the main phase. Then we have the eclipse phase. So after the third turn, in a round, players, if they still have cards in hand, they can choose to save cards from their hand for the eclipse phase. So once everybody's taken 3 actions, the main action phase is over. We go to the eclipse phase, in which everybody reveals what they have placed there. And they count how much labor they have. Oh wait, I forgot an action that is rarely taken. That's why I forgot it, which is, instead of placing your worker on the board on those 4 spaces I showed you, you can also choose to place it there, have the worker rest, in which case you draw a card, you can tip an animal, and during the eclipse phase, that worker will produce extra labor. So producing labor during the eclipse phase, what it does, it adjusts the order on the turn track. There, the most labor goes on top and gives you a benefit. When you take a benefit, you can also choose to take one that is lower instead. So during the eclipse phase, first we determine the new turn order. Then, in turn order, players will resolve benefits that they may get from cards that they save for the eclipse phase. Then you check this board here, and players will receive eclipse bonuses for the areas where they have majority of influence. Then you look at your board and you collect the benefits that are shown on your board, such as this one, and also the stones that you acquired early on. That's the idea. 3 turns for each round, then an eclipse phase, then start the next round. After 4 rounds, you have some final scoring. I'm not going to go in detail with that, and the player with the highest score wins the game. The game, as I said, can also be played solitaire. The mechanism is pretty simple. You play 2 players, and there is a deck of cards that tells you where you place the worker of the opponent and then the actions that they take. What is interesting is that during the first turn of a round, you're looking at 1 card. Then the second turn, you draw another card and you place it like so that the column of actions that they can perform is higher. And then this would be the third turn, and these would be the actions that they perform. So pretty simple, and still pretty effective. AI, as the AI collects stuff, takes away stuff from you, and scores a lot of points, like a lot. This is a solid, reliable, heavy Eurogame, which will appeal to committed players of hobby games. But at the same time, it also doesn't do much, if anything, to mitigate some of the dangers that come with, well, long, complicated Eurogames with a lot of components. One is just, again, this physical table hog that you have to deal with. You need a large table, and then again, logistically, each player will have to deal with some information looking very small because of the distance. It's impossible to have everything in immediate intuitive sight of everybody. Expect the first session in which you are introducing new players to be very slow, and also, of course, to take quite a while for the rules to be taught and absorbed. And then, well, so the first session probably is going to be pretty long, but the game is long anyways because the economy is pretty tight and you really want to maximize your actions, and you really want to make sure that you're collecting the right culture cards to trigger the right effects, to collect the right resources, which you can then use for certain things, and so and so. And if you find yourself at the end that you're kind of wasting an action because you're missing one thing, one resource, it can be pretty damaging if everybody else has been playing efficiently. So you can't afford that. So you want to take your sweet time to decide all of these things. And when it comes, of course, to area majority, to influence, then you really want to try to figure out if certain players are going to go in a certain direction or in a certain other things. You want to count exactly how many influence points you have everywhere. The game gives an incentive to do so. It would be a bad idea not to. And so there's going to be downtime. That seems to be unavoidable. Even when players are familiar with the rules, you want to double check everything. You want to sequence your actions correctly. There is going to be downtime. With 3-4 players, I don't see much of a way around that. And there isn't anything for the players to do out of turn other than to wait. You can plan your strategy, and sometimes that works, but if somebody takes an action and you were counting on having the bonus or being the first, that doesn't work. Somebody places their camps in an area you didn't expect. Then your strategy needs to be retweaked, readjusted at the beginning of your turn. Once you go past that, it's fun. It's really good to have such an interesting... You know what a point salad is? This is almost like a resource salad, but again, at the end... The things that you need to do are so demanding that you're at risk of being short of an ingredient. But it's something satisfying that I collect some animals, I put down some camps, I take this and I collect those things, and I play those other cards. And definitely it's fun to combine worker placement and deck building. But again, when you take 2 mechanics, each of which is sufficient for a game, and you put them together, you increase the complexity, you increase the length of the game, the rule set becomes longer. Maybe you need to trim something somewhere else. And I can't get past the impression that the game could do without some of the things, some of the boards. I think that when you have incremented the elements in your core game, maybe trimming some of the other things would have made the experience a little more fast-paced and a little more intuitive. So again, it's nice to see different mechanics. It's nice coming together. It's nice to see all of these other things that you can do, all of these resources you can combine. But these mini games that you're almost playing with the Megalith board, that's its own mini game. I don't know. Sometimes the experience just feels a little bit all over the place. And when I'm talking about downtime, one of the most significant parts is during the eclipse phase, which again, it's some mini game in which each player goes through collect a resource from that, collect a reward from that, do that, check the influence points for each player, collect different things. Oh, my reward is to put on a megalith, which gives me more resources. The upkeep, the inventory, the keeping inventory, and just these steps that you need to take, they take a toll. So I have, as you can see, some reservations about not the design, which in itself is fine, but how it actually plays, especially with 3-4 players because of the downtime. Which means, by the way, don't have those reservations when you play the game solo against the AI, which I tried, and I found that almost like maybe this is how the game is supposed to be. Well, no downtime. I just see the effects of what the people playing by the fact that certain resources are removed, but I'm taking my turns, I'm creating my little engines, I'm playing all of these extra cards, and I'm so proud that I collected them. I'm sequencing my things, I'm taking my sweet time to choose my options. I don't feel guilty that I'm slowing down the game. And so, definitely no reservation for the solo version if you're playing, if you enjoy complex, heavy games. So, Endless Winter, Paleoamericans, it's a long, complex, heavy game. It will have an audience. There are many players that would enjoy this kind of experience, but you need to be aware of the downtime that may cause. And if you enjoy heavy games and you're planning to play it solo, then no problem. Then I definitely recommend this game for that specific mode of approach.